Welcome back, class. Today, we're going to dive into due process, one of the most debated constitutional concepts. Do you know that Black activists' fight for civil rights had a direct impact on reproductive rights? We're going to take a look at the 14th Amendment and how it shaped Roe v. Wade, one of the most consequential Supreme Court cases of the 20th century. The Due Process Clause appears twice in the U.S. Constitution. The 5th Amendment protects against actions of the federal government, while the 14th Amendment extends those protections to the states. At its core, due process prevents the government from arbitrarily taking rights away, but it has two sides, procedural and substantive. Procedural due process governs how the government enforces laws. It ensures fair trials, legal representation, and proper notice. Even if the government has the power to act, it must follow fair procedures. An example is in Goss v. Lopez, where the Supreme Court ruled that students can't be suspended without a hearing. Substantive due process, on the other hand, deals with what laws the government can and cannot pass. It protects fundamental rights that are not explicitly listed in the Constitution, but are considered essential to liberty. It prevents the government from passing laws that violate deeply personal rights. And procedural due process is about fairness in legal proceedings, while substantive due process defines personal freedoms the government cannot infringe upon. In 1973, Roe v. Wade ruled that the right to privacy under substantive due process included a woman's right to abortion. The case challenged a Texas law that banned abortion except to save the mother's life. The Supreme Court ruled in a 7-2 decision that the Due Process Clause protects a right to privacy, which extends to abortion. The ruling created a trimester framework, making abortion legal nationwide. The fight for due process has deep roots in Black history. The 14th Amendment, which contains the Due Process Clause, was passed in 1868 to protect the rights of formerly enslaved people. Black activists and legal scholars fought to ensure the courts applied due process fairly, shaping how the law protected individual rights. Cases like Brown v. Board of Education helped establish that substantive due process could be used to expand civil rights. Black-led legal victories forced the courts to recognize personal rights under the Due Process Clause, which later became the legal basis for privacy rights, contraception rights, and abortion rights. Before Roe v. Wade, Black women had already been fighting for reproductive freedom due to a long history of government control over Black bodies. Black women like Fannie Lou Hamer, who was sterilized without her consent, helped lead the fight for reproductive justice. The fight against forced sterilization helped shape legal arguments for bodily autonomy and privacy, the same principles at the heart of Roe v. Wade. Over the next 50 years, opponents of Roe worked to weaken it. In the 2010s, states passed more aggressive abortion bans, hoping to challenge Roe in the Supreme Court. And with Trump's appointment of 3 conservative judges, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, the court had a 6-3 conservative majority. In 2018, Mississippi passed a law banning most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, directly contradicting the trimester framework set by Roe. This led to Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, the case that overturned Roe. In Dobbs, the Supreme Court ruled that abortion is not a constitutional right. The majority opinion, written by Justice Alito, argued that Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, that the Constitution does not explicitly protect abortion, and that the issue should be left to the states. As a result, abortion was almost immediately banned or severely restricted in multiple states. The ruling also raised concerns about other rights based on substantive due process. Justice Clarence Thomas suggested that cases protecting contraception and same-sex marriage should also be reconsidered. The fall of Roe has had a disproportionate impact on Black communities. Black women face higher maternal mortality rates and more barriers to reproductive health care, meaning restrictions on abortion hit Black communities the hardest. With the Dobbs decision overturning Roe, substantive due process rights are now at risk. The same due process protections that Black people fought to expand, privacy, personal liberty, and bodily autonomy, are now vulnerable to legal challenges that could roll back other rights, including contraception and marriage equality. Legal fights led by Black Americans expanded due process protections for all Americans, but history shows that rights are not permanent. They must be defended. And as we look at the future of reproductive rights, privacy, and personal freedom, we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to fight for due process the way Black freedom fighters of the past did? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about what happens next.